The sterile hum of the ship's engines was the only sound that filled Captain Arya Voss's ears as she stood at the helm, her fingers hovering over the console. Her eyes scanned the holographic map, the stars blinking back at her, a familiar sight that had once felt comforting. Now, it felt like a countdown to doom. A sharp tone pierced the silence, the tactical officer's voice crackling through the comms. "Captain, we've detected a massive fleet. Estimated size, well beyond anything we've seen before." "Zaravox, Captain?" Voss closed her eyes for a moment, biting down on her lip. The Zaravox. A name that had haunted coalition commanders for years, an alien empire so vast, so terrifying, that entire fleets had been wiped out trying to resist them. They didn't negotiate. They didn't offer peace. They simply conquered. "How much time do we have?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot tightening in her chest. The tactical officer's voice trembled slightly. "Less than an hour, Captain." Her hand clenched into a fist, her thoughts racing. She had commanded the ship, the Crescent Dawn, for over 5 years, but never had she been faced with a threat like this. There were no reinforcements within range. No allies to turn to. The fleet was spread too thin across coalition space. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her like the crushing force of a collapsing star. "Captain, we need to retreat. We can't fight them off," Ensign Barlow said, his voice urgent. He stood nearby, his face pale, eyes wide with fear. "We're outnumbered 100 to 1. Voss turned her gaze toward him, her expression calm but firm. "Running won't save us, Ensign. If they reach Earth, humanity falls." She could hear the murmurs of concern ripple through the bridge crew. Some were nodding, others were silent, uncertain of what to do next. In the past, her decisions had always been guided by logic, by the duty to preserve lives. But this was different. This was a matter of survival, not just for her crew, but for all of humanity. "Captain," Commander Jalen, the ship's second-in-command, spoke up. His voice was rough with experience. "If we retreat now, we'll just be leading them straight to Earth. We'll be sacrificing everything. But if we stay, we might buy the Coalition enough time to respond. We could hold them off." Voss looked at him, searching his face. Jalen had always been the voice of reason, the calm center when things went sideways. He wasn't one to suggest reckless moves. And yet here he was, advocating for a suicide mission. "I'm not willing to sacrifice my crew, Jalen," she said, her voice cold with resolve. "Then we'll die trying," he replied, his voice unwavering. He locked eyes with her, and she saw the same determination that had always made him her most trusted officer. Voss exhaled, turning back to the holographic display. The alien fleet had yet to enter weapons range, but they were advancing rapidly. She had one choice: fight. "Prepare the ship," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "We'll make our stand here." The crew sprang into action, their movements quick and practiced. The ship's weapons systems came online with a low hum, and the shields were raised. Voss's hand hovered over the console, activating the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Captain Arya Voss of the Crescent Dawn. To all Coalition vessels in range, the Zaravox are here. We are the first line of defense. We will hold until reinforcements arrive." Her voice echoed through the ship, steady, strong, a lifeline in the midst of chaos. "Stay strong. Stay together." As the crew busied themselves with preparations, Voss stood at the helm, her mind racing. The Zaravox were ruthless, but they had never encountered a force like the Coalition. Humanity had survived worse, surely they could survive this. She would make sure of it. Her eyes flicked to the screen again. The Zaravox ships were closing in, their massive hulls black against the stars. Their ships were sleek, like predators in the dark, their weapons systems glowing with the promise of destruction. Voss could almost feel their presence in the air, like an oppressive weight, bearing down on her shoulders. "Captain," Lieutenant Saran called from the weapons station. "I've got them locked in, but the fleet is too vast. We can't hit them all at once. We need to choose a target." Voss hesitated. Choosing a target would mean focusing on one part of the enemy fleet, leaving others to continue their advance. But she had no other choice. They had to do something. Target the flagship, she ordered, her voice unwavering. If we take down their command ship, we might break their coordination. It's our best shot. Saran nodded, her fingers flying across the console. The ship's targeting systems locked onto the Zaravox flagship, and the main weapons systems powered up with a low, resonant hum. Vasa's eyes never left the screen, watching as the alien ships continued their inexorable approach. Captain, Jalen said, his voice quiet but tense. Do you think we can really do this? We're talking about a fleet that's crushed entire colonies. Vas turned to him, her face hard. We've faced impossible odds before, Jalen. We've come through every time. We won't stop now. There was a beat of silence. Then, with a deep breath, Vas gave the order. Fire! The weapons systems unleashed a barrage of energy, the bright flashes of plasma lighting up the void as they hurtled toward the Zaravox flagship. The enemy ships responded immediately, firing their own devastating weapons in retaliation. A shockwave rattled the Crescent Dawn, throwing the crew off balance. But the ship held steady, its shields holding strong for now. Direct hit! Saran called, her voice laced with disbelief. The flagship is damaged. They're backing off. For a brief moment, the bridge was silent, the crew staring in shock at the screen. The Zaravox had never shown any sign of hesitation before. They were known for their single-minded aggression, never faltering. But now, for the first time, it seemed they were unsure. Vas allowed herself a small smile. We've just bought ourselves some time. Let's make it count. She turned to face her crew, the weight of the battle ahead still pressing down on her, but a new fire igniting in her chest. The fight had just begun. The bridge lights flickered as another shockwave rippled through the Crescent Dawn. Arya Vas gripped the edge of her command console, sweat trickling down the side of her face. The initial success of damaging the Zaravox flagship had come at a steep price. Their retaliation had been swift and brutal, testing every inch of her ship's defenses. Shields at 29%, Saran called, her voice thin with exhaustion. We can't take another direct hit, Captain. Vasa's mind raced. They couldn't win a war of attrition. The alien fleet was adapting, adjusting its tactics with an eerie precision that suggested something beyond brute force, a coordinated intelligence. Her crew was already past the edge of their limits. She needed a new plan, and fast. Captain! Commander Jalen's voice came low, steady, but tinged with urgency. There's one option left. It's buried in the archives of Project JRVOX. Vasa's eyes narrowed. She hadn't heard that name in years. That AI protocol was decommissioned, she said quietly. It was buried, Jalen corrected. Not dismantled. She stared at him for a moment, measuring his intent. Then she turned to the navigation officer. Route access through the central core. Pull every classified fragment on JRVOX. Moments later, the holoscreen shimmered to life with a burst of static. Then came a voice, cold, synthetic, layered with the faint trace of something once human. Designation, JRVOX Online. Confirming emergency override. Ghost Protocol authorization pending. Vas stepped forward, her voice crisp. This is Captain Arya Vas. Coalition authorization, Zeta 7 Kilo. Confirm override and engage Ghost Protocol. The AI hesitated. Warning. Ghost Protocol tactics are untested and carry a 94% risk of fatality for all participating crew. Confirm execution? She didn't blink. Confirmed. The lights dimmed as the AI synchronized with the ship's core systems. New data flooded the interface, patterns, coordinates, deceptive projections. The protocol didn't rely on brute force but deception, subterfuge, and calculated misdirection. Instead of fighting the enemy head-on, the ship would fragment its signals, disperse false copies of itself across multiple vectors using quantum refractors and abandoned drone units. They were going to make the Zaravox think they were everywhere. Vas turned back to her crew. We're not facing them directly anymore. We're going to outthink them. Barlow frowned. That's not fighting. That's hiding. It's surviving, Jalen said flatly. And if we survive long enough, maybe we win. The protocol demanded sacrifice. Sections of the ship had to be jettisoned, life support pods, auxiliary weapon stations, even parts of the hull, to simulate destroyed fragments in other locations. Crew members were reassigned or crammed into backup compartments, power rerouted from non-critical systems. Everything not essential to maneuvering and Ghost protocol execution was stripped away. The process was surgical. Voss oversaw it all with a detached precision that masked her growing dread. Every step they took brought them closer to either salvation or annihilation. Then came the next wave. 10 Zervox cruisers broke off from the main formation, converging on the false signals. One drone detonated, another scattered a burst of radiation mimicking a reactor implosion. The aliens took the bait, dividing their forces, their sensors struggling to pin down a solid target. On the bridge, Saran let out a breath. They're chasing ghosts. That's the idea, Voss said. But the enemy was learning. The Zervox adapted faster than any algorithm Voss had seen. They began deploying their own decoys, creating counter patterns. It was a chess match played at light speed, and the margin for error was razor thin. Amid the haze of battle, a flicker appeared on the screen, an incoming signal. Not coalition. Not automated. Alien. Captain, we're receiving a directed transmission from the enemy flagship, Jalen said. Voss's heartbeat quickened. Patch it through. Visual. The screen pulsed, then resolved into an image unlike anything she had expected. A Zervox commander, tall, silver-skinned, eyes like twin eclipses. But the most striking feature was its expression, not rage, not contempt. Curiosity. Human. The voice resonated, translated in real time by the AI. Why do you persist? This is not a battle. It is a delay. You cannot stop what is coming. Voss stepped forward, her voice clear. I persist because there's more at stake than you understand. You think you've faced resistance, but you haven't faced us. Not truly. The alien regarded her in silence. Your tactics are different, it finally said. Unexpected. Costly. But interesting. A beat passed. Then the signal cut. Jalen turned to her. Was that a negotiation? Voss shook her head. No. It was a warning. And a compliment. She returned to the console. The Ghost protocol was beginning to fragment under the strain of continuous recalibration. The ship couldn't hold this illusion forever. Already, the stress on the hull was reaching critical. A decision had to be made. The final phase, JRVOX intoned. Suggested maneuver, controlled core rupture, masked within false warp trajectory. Result, signal dispersion complete. Survivability, statistically negligible. Saran stood. Captain, we'll die. No, Voss said. You won't. She looked to Jalen. Get the crew to the escape pods. You take command once you're clear. That's an order. Arya. That's an order. He stared at her, fury and pain warring in his expression. Then he saluted. Aye, Captain. As the crew filed out, Voss remained. Her hands danced across the controls, programming the detonation sequence, timing the false warp signal to scatter fragments of the crescent dawn in every direction. In the final moments, she stood alone on the bridge, eyes fixed on the stars beyond. The alien armada loomed closer, uncertain now, slowed by hesitation and confusion. Voss pressed the final command. A blinding white light enveloped the ship. And then silence. The escape pod rocked violently as shockwaves rippled through the void, casting a cold blue shimmer across the face of Commander Jalen. Through the small viewport, he watched the distorted light of the simulated warp rupture where the crescent dawn had once stood. No debris. No sign of life. Just the artificial echo of a ship that had become legend in a single heartbeat. Beside him, Ensign Barlow sat rigid, his fingers trembling on his lap. Do you think she made it? he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jalen didn't answer. His mind raced through possibilities, through the 1,000 outcomes the AI had mapped. None offered comfort. She gave us a chance, he said finally. Now we make it count. Coalition Command received the emergency signal 12 hours later, fragmented, encoded, and laced with traces of the JRVX protocol. The initial assumption was catastrophic loss. But something in the signal patterns intrigued the analysts. The ghost signatures of a dozen different ships, all mirroring the energy signature of the Crescent Dawn, were detected across multiple systems. Within days, rumors spread through the fleet. Whispers of a captain who'd outwitted the Zaravox with shadows and sacrificial brilliance. The alien advance halted, not from force, but confusion. The path to Earth now lay behind a wall of uncertain data, conflicting sensor readings, and decoy signals. Voss's death was never confirmed. Back in the Outer Rim, aboard a quiet research station orbiting the gas giant Runo V, Jalen debriefed before a room of solemn admirals. The war wasn't over, but the tide had shifted. The Zaravox were no longer advancing. For the first time, they were hesitating. Captain Voss didn't just stall them, Jalen told the room. She made them question their own dominance. That hesitation is our weapon now. Do you believe she's alive? One admiral asked. Jalen hesitated. I believe she planned for more than just sacrifice. She always did. Weeks passed. A coalition fleet regrouped, building defenses along the outer systems. Reinforcements arrived. For every ghost signal scattered by the JRVX detonation, a new opportunity to deceive the enemy was born. It became a new doctrine, one born not of brute power, but cleverness. Humanity's survival hinged on unpredictability, and Voss had written the first chapter in a new kind of warfare. But her name did not fade. A small, unauthorized shrine appeared on the main deck of the flagship Solstice. A single inscription beneath her hologram read, "She stood alone so we wouldn't have to." Jalen visited it once, quietly. He left a fragment of the ring she had always worn, a symbol of unity, the one thing she never took off, even in battle. Years later, long after the war had stalemated into tense diplomacy, a signal pinged from the edge of coalition space. It was faint, encoded in the old JRVOX cipher. A single burst of data, just long enough to get through the outer interference. One phrase decoded cleanly. The dawn endures. And then it vanished. Jalen stood alone in the observation chamber, eyes locked on the stars. In the silence, he smiled. The galaxy was vast, brutal, and uncertain, but now it carried the memory of a captain who had stared down extinction and taught humanity how to defy it. Not with weapons, but with will.